If you have family members who depend on your income, you need life insurance. Getting covered now locks in your rate as is. Over the course of 10 or a 20-year policy, those savings add up. Head to policygenius.com/Chael. In minutes, you can work out how much coverage you're going to need and compare personalized quotes to find the best price. When you're ready to apply, the Policygenius team will handle the paperwork and scheduling for free. And since their licensed experts work for you and not the insurance companies, you can trust them to offer unbiased advice. Policygenius never sells your information to other companies. They don't add on extra fees, and you could save 50% or more on life insurance by comparing quotes with a Policygenius. You could save $1,300 or more per year by using Policygenius to compare your life insurance policies. Go to policygenius.com/Chael. Dana's looking for a backup fighter for McGregor versus Poirier. And I love the whole backup fighter idea and concept. I mean, how many years until we finally learned to put a backup fighter in, right? I mean, do you guys remember 10 and 15 years ago, having a big card, something you're looking forward to, last minute, you lose your main event? And there's some built-in mechanisms that the UFC does specifically. By example, whatever your main event is, okay, whatever weight class, if that's heavyweight, if that's light heavyweight, if that's 185, so on and so forth, another feature match on your main card will be within that same weight class. Why? In case anything happens to the main event, you've already got somebody within the same weight class who has been promoted, who people are looking forward to watch, that you can slide into that spot. So that's a big deal, though. You guys might go, it makes perfect sense. I understand that makes perfect sense, but a lot of organizations can't do that. They don't have the depth. I will recall, and so will you, when Affliction literally not only canceled a show, they closed the doors and went out of business when they lost Josh Barnett versus Fedor. They just didn't have enough guys under contract. It wasn't a situation where here at the last minute, you can just shuffle the deck and put somebody in there. So it's a very big deal that you do at least observe that concept, understand what it takes, know why you're taking the risk. And then we went a step further. About 3 years ago was the first time. And I think it was Volkov at heavyweight. He flies in from Russia. He gets on the scale. He was never advertised. Nobody knew. He even walked out to get on the scale, and everybody's looking around going, Volkov's not on this card. Well, they had very quietly made a deal with Volkov, bring him over, get him licensed, follow all of the procedures in case he needs to step in for somebody. It was a great idea. So then moving forward, it stopped being a quiet thing. You see, realize, hey, there's nothing wrong with us being prepared and planning. We can let the audience in on this. You'll remember that Kamaru Usman was the backup fighter for Darren Till versus T. Wood. But what happened to Kamaru? It made him the number one contender. It's a hard thing to argue. If I'm going to be the backup guy for a world title fight, how are you saying I'm not the top contender? It was one of those things. But the argument worked for Usman. All of a sudden, he's fighting for the belt himself. Conor made it unfashionable. Conor got asked to be a replacement fighter. I believe it was for Ferguson Khabib, one of those fights that fell apart. And Conor publicly said, I'm not a backup fighter. And he put his foot down. And so then everybody thought, well, we got to follow what Conor says, and it's not cool to be the backup guy. I'm just kind of giving you the timeline, kind of giving you a little bit of the history of the backup fighter. I personally like it. I think it's great. Michael Chandler did it to go all the way to Fight Island on Abu Dhabi, and he was greatly rewarded for that attitude and doing it, much like Kamaru Usman, in that his next fight was for the championship. And Dana's saying that he doesn't have a current backup fighter for McGregor versus Poirier. And Dana said, I'm looking for somebody, but nobody's kicking my door in. And you have to understand what Dana said there and why he said that and how it pertains to Dana and Dana's psyche, okay? Dana likes somebody who wants something. Dana likes the guy that this is the opportunity and they're begging to get it. I've heard many stories where somebody's shown up at the UFC to have a meeting with Dana, just pops in, checks in at the front and waits in the lobby, and they will wait there for 5 or 6 hours. But that guy who waited, Dana will take that meeting. He loves when that guy's willing to sit there for 5 hours. I don't know what he needs or what he wants. I'm in. And I can't even remember, this was documented one time on an Ultimate Fighter. But Dana came over to the house, right? Picture the Ultimate Fighter. They're all back at the house, both teams together, unwinding, having dinner. Dana pops in to tell them somebody within the tournament is not going to move on, and one of the fighters that's already beat is going to come back in, and they all just stand there. None of them wanted it. They all just stood there. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to make weight. I'm going to have to train. I'm going to have to fight somebody in 2 or 3 days. I pick someone else. And Dana leaves the house halfway in disgust, halfway like, what are we doing? The whole thing's videoed, and this guy follows Dana out into the dark of night. This was at night. He comes to Dana's car. Like, the cameras barely even picked this up because it was so hard to see. And the guy said, man, please, 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 put me in. And that was it. Dana said, done. He walks back in the house and he tells everybody else, all the rest of you that sit and had to think about it, don't have to think about it anymore. I got my guy. But Dana's also letting you into his mindset and what he likes. And it's very important that you observe this, because this is a tremendous opportunity. And imagine you were a backup fighter, and the next thing you know, you're in the cage with Conor McGregor, right? You're in the cage with Dustin Poirier. There is going to be tremendous rewards for this. Tremendous. You are going to have tremendous eyeballs on you. You're going to circumvent everybody that wants to be in there with Conor, everybody that's going to be forced to be in there with Dustin, right? Two different fights and for 2 different reasons. You're going to cut the line in front of all of them just by saying, I'll do it. And now Dana's revealing that nobody's done that. That's a miss. That is a tremendous miss. And it surprises me. And I'm willing to give some benefit of the doubt here to the boys, in that perhaps they didn't know that they were looking for something like that. Perhaps the boys just didn't know that was an opportunity that you're looking to get filled. So I will give them some rope, but I do think that they need to learn and observe that the backup fighter for these major fights and these major pay-per-views is now a piece of this industry. And if you can't get what you want, go get the next best thing. I mean, that is an absolute rule of life. If you cannot get what you want, you got to go out and get the next best thing. There's very positive mechanisms that come with being a backup fighter. For example, you will go into training camp. You will get disciplined. You will get focused. Some guys have a hard time going to practice. I can't relate to that. I win every single day, and I don't say that to shine my own wheels. I'm sharing with you that a lot of other guys just don't. They don't go until they have that contract because they don't know why. What am I in there for? What am I training for? Who am I training for? Orthodox, southpaw, grappler, stand-up fighters, one of those things doesn't connect in everybody's brain. You go become a backup fighter, you got your marching orders. You know exactly what I need to do. You know exactly when the date is and whether it comes or not. What's the worst thing that happened? That you went through a training camp, you got in really great shape, you got your weight down, and you're ready now for what does come next. It's only positive things. I ended up in the UFC. I'll personalize this, but I could not figure out how to get in. I did not know. And I had friends that were in, but they wouldn't make a phone call for me. They just wouldn't. And social media was different. Didn't exist. This was still back in a time where not everybody had a cell phone. It was one of these things where you needed somebody to speak up for you. You just couldn't get seen. You couldn't get in front of people. In this case, it would be Joe Silva. And Babalu was a very scary fight back then. He was on a path to be matching up with Chuck Liddell and going to go off and have his own world title fights, and Babalu's opponent pulled out. I just happened to read it online, and I had Joe Silva's email. I got it somewhere from somebody. And it was an easy one, too. I mean, it was like, Joe S at UFC.com. But I didn't know it until I knew it. I just sent him an email. He didn't know me from the man on the moon. I sent him an email, said, I will take this Babalu fight if there's an opportunity. He wrote me back. I was in the UFC. I had done so many things. I had worked so hard. I put my own strategies and my own plans together on how to get recognized, how to get noticed, and how to get this opportunity. None of them worked. But asking for an opportunity when Joe happened to be looking for a guy, boom, we just helped each other out. And I've got a few more stories like that, guys. You'll remember Pride. Pride was another one, right? I was trying to get into Pride. I was trying to get in the UFC. Those were the two places you have. Now you have Bellator, you have the UFC, but it used to be Pride and the UFC. Only televised mixed martial arts events in the world, in case you've been living under a rock and don't know what Pride is. But Pride even had a tryout in California. You had to pay, you had to get yourself out there, you all come under one roof, and the executives are going to be there, and they're going to put you through some exercises, and this is how you're going to get in front of somebody. Now, that was nothing more than a marketing ploy for Pride. It had nothing to do with helping an athlete be discovered. I didn't know that at the time. So I went out to the tryout. They gave one award. At the end of the night, there was something called a Bushido Award, and they only gave one. I don't know what Bushido means, but the fact that they only gave one led me to believe it was something pretty cool, and I got it. I got in front of everybody. They bring me up, and I get a little round of applause. But I remember thinking, man, if this is a tryout and there's one award being handed out, and it just got handed to me, I'm in pride. I mean, I remember thinking that. I remember going home and celebrating, calling my mom. I mean, that must be what it means. Well, in a short period of time after that, that's when I find out this whole thing was a marketing ploy, and we were all used. No pride contract. I have a teammate, okay? Enjoy this. I have a teammate, Terry Sokaju. We have a pride executive come in to Dan Henderson's Team Quest gym in Temecula. Executive's in Dan's office. They call Sokaju in. Executive tells him, take it. They loved his dreadlocks. They loved his look. They said, take your shirt off. He takes his shirt off. Guy signs him to a contract on the spot, right? So I'm out there, I'm going to tryouts, and I'm doing all these things. I'm fighting regional shows, hoping a friend will make a phone call for me. I mean, right, it's beg, steal, borrow at that point. I mean, anything you can do to survive. Sokaju has a cool hairdo and some big muscles, boom, contract. Now, Terry went on and put on some wonderful fights in Pride. I'm just sharing with you, the way in isn't what you think it might be. That's all I'm trying to share with you. Like, there is no actual architecture or recipe in place. 2 + 2 does not equal 4 in MMA. I will see all of these fighters sit down with their little strategists and their little managers. I'll see them get it wrong, up, down, and sideways. But then I will also remind you, one of the great ways in life to get an opportunity is to be willing to do something that other people aren't willing to do. And I think that this backup fighter, right? I mean, some guys don't look at it with the positivity that I do. They don't look at it like, hey, I'm gonna go into camp and I'm gonna be disciplined. I'm gonna be with my team, and maybe we get a reward, and maybe we don't. But in a worst case, we're in good shape and our name's in the headlines. Some of them don't look at it like that. They go, man, you're telling me I'm gonna go through a whole training camp. I don't even get my win or show. I'm not eligible for bonus, no sponsorships. I'm gonna get this little small participation. Thanks for showing up, and I'm gonna get put on a plane and sent back home. I mean, some of them look at it from this negative standpoint, and I can't fix that. I can only tell you the guys that didn't, the guys that did look at it as positive. The guys like Kamaru Usman, the guys like Michael Chandler. This is off the top of my head, but they both went in to massive fights after that. So I give the boys a pass. Quite frank, I didn't know Dana was looking for a backup fighter for that fight. I think it's very obvious. I think it's a big fight. I think history tells us that we're now doing backup fighters. In fairness, I overlooked it. So I'm going to assume they overlooked it too. But on the outside chance that I'm wrong, and the reason we don't have a backup fighter is somebody kicking Dana's back door in and begging for this opportunity, if it's not because they didn't know and it was out of sight, out of mind, it was because they don't see that it's such a positive. That's the part that we got to correct. One comment negative about it by Conor McGregor of I'm not a backup fighter diminished the cool factor. But guys, don't miss this opportunity. It is a cool thing. It is a cool thing to be the guy. It is a cool thing to be a team player. It is a cool thing to be ready, to be in camp, to stay sharp, to be studying the competition. And the fans will look at you that way. And just to go back to Chandler, but the way that we, the fans, had to observe Michael Chandler, because don't forget, when Chandler agreed to go out to be the backup fighter for Gaethje and Khabib, that is a drastically different fight. It couldn't be more different of a fight. Gaethje wants to stand up with you and bludgeon you. Khabib wants to take you down and maul you. Totally different fight. Scary enough to have to deal with one of those guys. Chandler had to deal with both of them. He had to be prepared on 1 day's notice, because that's when you're going to find out. It's the day of weigh-ins. That's the day you find out, am I getting in or not? So on 1 day's notice, Michael Chandler had the bravado and the courage of his first time in an organization to take on drastically different styles. He got credit for that. He deserved the credit for that. And so will the other guys. And I only bring that to you because before you think, I'm not good enough, or I don't belong in there with Conor, and there is some of this self-sabotage, and some of it's just being realistic. The other side of the coin is what Dana's speaking about, which is I don't have anybody, and I need somebody. Nobody's bothering me. Nobody's wanting this opportunity. I begged my way into that spot. It was Vitor Belfort versus John Jones. And I wanted the fight. Vitor beat me. Vitor beat me in getting the opinion of Dana. So when I was on the phone and Dana was telling me, hey man, I'm giving this to Vitor, I said, let me go if he doesn't. Vitor's pulled out of plenty of fights. Let me be the guy if he's not. Will you commit to me to that? And Dana's, and he kind of him and hot. No. Come on. It's only me and Vitor here. He beat me out. If he doesn't, can I get a commitment that I'm the guy if something happens to Vitor? And I had to beg him. I remember where I was, Outback Steakhouse, just finished practice, sitting with my father-in-law and my wife, and I was begging him. That's where I had to result. Commit to me. If this doesn't work, I'm the guy. And I told him why. So I just got done practicing. I want to get up tomorrow and get my miles in, come back in the afternoon. I want to go into full training camp. I need a little spark. Am I the guy? Finally got the yes. Yes, you're the guy. And as simple as that may sound, Dana then mentioned it to the media. The media then went and ran with it. I'm personalizing this a little bit, but I'm trying to tell you from a first-hand perspective, there are some real benefits there. And there's a bigger benefit that to make sure that you observe when Dana is telling you nobody's kicking my door in. He's letting you know what he likes. He's letting you know what he respects. He's letting you know what he looks for. I suggest when he tells you those things, you listen.